I'm really happy that I get to share with you another Compass video. Today we're looking at the topic of hospitality, and as you've already been talking about in your group, a topic that is related to that is the topic of belonging. Belonging is something we know about, but we don't often think about. And so my hope is that today, as you've been talking, you've had a chance to think about the opportunities that you've had in your life to belong, or maybe help others belong. Belonging is part of what it means to be community. Belonging is a central need in our lives that we have. Each one of us has this need, this desire to belong. And so I hope that you've had that experience of belonging. And if you haven't had that experience a lot, my hope is that at least in your Compass small group, you feel a sense of belonging. So I was thinking as I was getting ready to create this video about when do we think about the word hospitality the most? Not so much the concept, but when do we think about the word hospitality? Sometimes, of course, the first word that comes to your mind is a related one, and that is hospital. Hospital, hospitality. I don't know that I would experience a whole lot of hospitality while in a hospital. Their goal is not to make me experience a hotel, but to help me to get to a point where I'm able to no longer need to be there medically. Where else do we experience hospitality? As a self-proclaimed Disney adult, while I don't go to Disney World for myself, I go for our family and for those family memories and family experiences. And I certainly don't go because I love Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is great, and I appreciate his presence and the presence of the whole Disney gang for my kids, but it's my thing. My thing that I enjoy so much about going to Disney is the hospitality that is, in my mind, unmatched. Their way of making you feel welcome, their way of immersing you, their way of helping you to discover the magic of Disney. It's not an accident. It's something that is deeply ingrained in their cast members, which is what they call their staff. Hospitality is their silver bullet, if you will. So how does the church think about hospitality? How do we think about hospitality as members of the church, or as part of the church family? How do we think about this idea of being hospitable? And where does hospitality fall in our lives? To begin thinking about that, I want to share with you from the letter to the Romans, the epistle of the Romans. This is coming from chapter 12, verses 9 through 18. Reading from the Common English Bible, it says this: "Love should be shown without pretending. Hate evil and hold on to what is good. Love each other like members of your own family. Be the best at showing honor to each other. Don't hesitate to be enthusiastic. Be on fire for the Spirit as you serve the Lord. Be happy in your hope. Stand your ground when you're in trouble, and devote yourselves to prayer. Contribute to the needs of God's people and welcome strangers into your home. Bless people who harass you. Bless and don't curse them. Be happy with those who are happy and cry with those who are crying. Consider everyone as equal, and don't think that you're better than anyone else. Instead, associate yourself with people who have no status. Don't think that you are so smart. Don't pay back anyone for their evil actions with evil actions, but show respect for what everyone else believes is good. If possible, to the best of your ability, live at peace with all people." I hope that as you heard that, there was a piece that stood out to you, a part that caught your attention. One of the pieces that stands out most to me is in verse 13. It says, "Contribute to the needs of God's people and welcome strangers into your home. Your host has done that with your Compass group. And we have opportunity to do that often. So often our homes have become places of refuge. Right? Our homes have become a place that we find our quiet space. We close our blinds, we lock our doors, we stay indoors so that others can't find us after we've had our day's work, when we're tired, when we just need respite. There's a comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco, who jokes about doorbells now versus doorbells when he was a kid. When someone would ring the doorbell as a kid, he used to get super excited, and everyone would jump around and be excited to see who was at the door and greet them and welcome them in, and they would share food together, and of course you always had to have food present in case someone came over. And he reminds us that today, when someone rings the doorbell, it's as if we find ourselves as a SEAL team trying to hide and stay quiet so that they might not find us ultimately. Now, obviously, it's a satirical look at it, but it's helpful for us to think about, how do we see our homes? How do we see our community? How do we see ourselves as a tool to be used by God in the midst of community creating? A lot of this has reminded me of a book that I came across some years ago, and it was one that got me thinking about the easy acts of hospitality we can have in our lives. It was a book written by Christian Schell. I actually have a copy of it here. It's called The Turquoise Table. It's in the church library if you're interested in taking a look at it. But you may want to find it yourself and spend some time with it. It really is an interesting book. Anyway, and I'll read you a piece from what she put on her website about what this is. And it says this: Christian Schell is on a mission to love her neighbors. She put a picnic table in her front yard, painted it turquoise, and began inviting neighbors, friends, and even strangers to hang out and do life together at the turquoise table. A new concept of hospitality unfolded in her neighborhood, and before long, the turquoise table led a movement of front yard people, ordinary people who long to create community right where they live. Today, there are turquoise tables all across America, from California to Maine, in all 50 states and 13 countries. Turquoise tables have become a symbol of hospitality, a safe place to sit down and connect over a cup of coffee or a glass of sweet tea. It's a simple concept that Kristen discovered. Creating space where people can come together, where community can be created. And here we're going to come back to that word. Where people can feel as though they belong. It's a simple act of hospitality that helps us to think about belonging. I want to read to you an excerpt from her book in which she talks about belonging a bit more. She says, "Lately I've been sitting at the turquoise, overwhelmed with gratitude that people who were once strangers I now call by name. People who stop by and those who hang out regularly at the table are more than neighbors, they're friends. We've celebrated births, cheered at graduations, mourned the tragedy of illness and death, and in between it all, we've shared the gift of ordinary days. I feel settled now. I know we belong in this neighborhood with these people at this table." As I read that, and as I consider the simple act of hospitality that could easily be repeated in any context, for us at our house, it's become the bus stop, a place where community is created, where belonging is felt, and we've only begun to know each other. I think about how the church has often thought about belonging to a church, joining a church. And typically the way we think about this is with what we call the 3 B's. If you've not heard of the three B's before, they are believing, behaving, and belonging. Believing might not be a wild stretch to figure out what that means. What we believe, what we believe about our faith, about God, about Christ, what we believe is a way of discipleship. It's necessary in the church that we talk about what we believe and that we can come to believe. Behaving might sound a little bit more rigorous, but it really is very simple. Our belief in Christ should lead us to a different way of living, and that's what behaving really is. Our way of living, caring for others, serving one another, loving the stranger, showing hospitality. These are ways of behaving. It's not some puritanical way of living or behaving in which you're supposed to act this way, dress this way, talk this way. Not necessarily. It's about the way of living, behaving in our lives that exemplifies Christ to the world. And that last B is belonging. Belonging is something, as I mentioned before, we all look for, we all strive for, we all want to be part of our lives. We want to feel as though we belong. We've all had the experience of not belonging, whether it's at recess on the playground, in our workspaces, in our neighborhoods, maybe in your church. We've all experienced what it means to not belong, but my hope is, as I said before, that you've had the experience of belonging as well. And belonging feels good. We feel connected, we feel communal. And so often the church has operated with these three B's in a particular order: believing, behaving, and then belonging. The goal was to find people who believe and to connect them with your church. Get them through the front door. Have them come visit on a Sunday. Have them come see how great your choir is. Have them come hear how great your preacher is. Have them come see how big and how beautiful and how maybe comforting your building is. Have them believe. Find those who already believe and invite them to come. And that used to be seemingly pretty easy. The next step was then behave. First, we want you to come because you believe. And now that you're in the church, we want to see that you behave. And typically, the way we think about it is we want you to see that you behave like us. If you came into a United Methodist church, the expectation is that you wouldn't bring your box of snakes to begin snake handling during worship. That wouldn't necessarily be behaving in the way that we would be looking for. But maybe we think about it a little bit more simple. The church for a long time has expected that those who come into the building will behave in a way that is acceptable. I remember when I was a kid, the big question was, if someone came into your church covered in tattoos, would they be welcomed? You see, the question wasn't really about belonging, it was about behavior. Was the way they behave in their life, the way they look in their life, is it acceptable in the church? Now, I think the question has probably changed a good bit. But even still, we see that behavior becomes a big piece of what it means to be a part of the church. And then lastly, we would look for belonging. If you check the box of believing, if you check the box of behaving, then you belong. As I said, belonging is an essential piece in this world. Now, I could go into a whole conversation about demographics and how the rate of belief and faith has changed in the world. I could talk about nuns and duns and what it means to grow up in a world that is increasingly more secular, and how that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a reality that we need to accept and recognize in our world around us. I could go into a whole conversation of that, but I won't. What I'll simply say is this. What if we changed the order? What if we addressed that thing that is so fundamental to every person first? What if we helped people feel as though they belong first? What if we didn't make belief be the first prerequisite of church life? What if we simply help people feel as though they belonged? Imagine someone coming to our community dinners, our free community dinners on Wednesday, the first Wednesday night of the month. They come in the room and they ask themselves, I don't know if I believe in Jesus. I don't know where I am in my faith journey. I'm not sure I'm what they're looking for, but I feel as though I belong here. What if we start there? What if we help people feel as though they belong, as though they're part of a community? And in the midst of being part of that community, they experience a faith that is real and not something based on every stereotype they've ever heard. What if we start with belonging and then we move to this believing and behaving stuff? What if we help them see the beauty of walking in a life that reflects Christ, that reflects love? What if we help them see that there is a God who loves them simply because they are? What if we start with belonging? Or maybe here's the bigger way of asking this question. What if we start with hospitality? What if we start with hospitality?